Hi, my name is Saviana Sebastian, and I'd like to welcome you to the official Occupy Wall Street Live news program. Here are the stories for today. On the eve of the NATO summit, thousands marched through Chicago to Mayor Rahm Emanuel's home to protest the closing of city community health clinics. Activists gathered in the front of the mayor's home for a short time before leaving to join a larger protest in downtown Chicago. While the protest was peaceful with no arrests, reports allege that in the evening protests, activists were beaten and arrested, with one run over by a police van. Here's a video.
We are standing in front of Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel's home. Today is May 19th, and you're watching Inside Out News.
Since the clinics were open, I have been getting lots of support. At the clinic that I have been going to. And Emmanuel, we are going to keep on fighting. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep on pushing. Until we win this battle.
Today kicks off the eve of the NATO summit here in Chicago, Illinois. We are standing in front of Mayor Rahm Emanuel's home, where protesters gathered earlier today after they marched from a local park. About 1,000 protesters gathered here. They sat on the street in front of the mayor's house and were demanding the reopening of the 6 of 12 city local clinics here in Chicago. How many clinics have been closed in the last couple of years or since the recession?
Well, just in the last few months, they've closed 6 of the mental health clinics, and they're preparing to privatize all 12 of the neighborhood health clinics.
Our mayor closed 6 of our clinics, and one of them is mine, and we have people dying. Since April 9th, we got 2 dead and 15 admitted in the hospital, and that's why I'm fighting for my neighborhood. Logan Square, Northwest Mental Health.
We're going to be hosting the NATO summit that is a war coalition that looks at the world and says, who can we bomb, instead of saying, who can we help? And so we're here to say we want our resources to go to healthcare, to reopen the mental health clinics, to help people who really need the help and not to be killing people overseas.
There are still a few protesters left behind me in front of the mayor's home. There's no word yet on when they plan to leave. The police are still here as well, guarding his home. We had reports that there are also police officers in the backyard of the house as well. There has been no sign of the mayor at all today. But the protest today was very peaceful. The police facilitated the protests very well. According to one of the legal observers, there was no permit for today's march, but that did not deter the protesters, and it did not seem to upset the Chicago Police Department. We will be back tomorrow with more reporting and live reporting, and you can find us on Twitter or Ustream, or you can watch us on our website at insideoutnews.org. This is Margot Paez signing off for Inside Out News.
And we're back with Occupy Wall Street Live. Here, next is a video interview Luke Rudowski did with Alex Jones about incidents he had been involved in during Chicago at NATO. The video shows how police targeted media people from the Occupy Wall Street movement. And we should be having it ready very soon. Okay, let's go to the video now.
Chicago PD be using agent provocateurs, police officers dressed up as block anarchists like we've seen in other large demonstrations across the country.
We're being raided right now. For those that are watching, we are being raided by the CPD as we speak.
They say they came here to peacefully protest, and now they say they're being treated like terrorists.
Darren Anusek says he walked to Chicago all the way from Philadelphia to participate in Occupy protests, only to be seized by police in a raid on an apartment at 32nd and Morgan yesterday.
For 18 hours, we were handcuffed to a bench, and our legs were shackled together.
Anusek was released this morning along with 4 others reportedly suspected of preparing Molotov cocktails.
There is absolutely no evidence that's been brought before any of us regarding Molotov cocktails or any criminal activity that was going on in this building.
A tenant who agreed to host the out-of-town protesters says the police did seize his home brew-making equipment, including buckets, beer bottles, and caps.
If anybody would like some, I would like to offer to the entire universe a sip of my beer.
Police officials refused to comment on the case.
We're not going to talk about it. We just are not going to talk about it.
National Guild lawyers say they have not been allowed to talk to their 5 clients still in custody. If they're not charged by 11:30 tonight, they have to be released, the lawyers say. What charges? One of the released men says he was told some kind of felony conspiracy charges.
Tell folks what else you've been witnessing there at NATO, what the London Guardian calls a police state. Welcome, NATO, to Chicago's police state.
Alex, there's so much to get into, especially our coverage here. The night we got pulled over earlier in the day, we were at the bail hearings for the NATO 3. The NATO 3 that are facing terrorist charges, we were there. We were the first ones to do a live report outside the courtroom, how this was a pure entrapment. The defense clearly stated that undercover agents supplied the explosive devices and instigated the call for violence. We were there reporting on that. A very weird situation occurred when we were live streaming later on in that day, and I have a feeling that we were almost about to be set up. We were staying with somebody because we really can't afford a hotel with one of my friends who is loosely associated with the Occupy Chicago group here, and my friend loosely knew her, and we were staying at our house. We got a phone call that the place we were staying at was being raided. That there was police officers inside. The person couldn't get inside. We broadcasted that message out to everybody on our Twitter, on our Ustream, told everybody this was happening. Later, the same person called us, told us not to tell anybody, not to contact the NOG, not to go there. I sent people there anyway. The place we were staying at, the door was open, the alarm was going off. Our stuff was still there. The person then went missing, wasn't in her apartment. And as we were talking about how weird this situation was, that our place was surrounded by police officers, after we were done live streaming, we just contacted the National Lawyers Guild to get some information.
Yeah, they were probably getting ready to have you on the news as the terrorist. Instead, they set up these other guys for the beer equipment, which the media went in and saw the big, I mean, it is a beer equipment, but doesn't matter. You'll probably go to prison for it. Go ahead.
Here's an excerpt from a Luis Gutierrez Esparza article on NATO in Chicago. The NATO summit ended in this city with an apparent show of solidarity around President Barack Obama and the U.S. government, reflecting the globalization of the formerly intended Atlantic Alliance, which has become a world police and army in the service of transnational Washington and its European allies. The event was attended by special guests such as Jordan, Qatar, and Armenia. In fact, the only agreement was that they agree not as to the departure of NATO troops that have occupied Afghanistan for 10 years. As some want to be fast and short, others gradual, and the U.S. government prefers a fake response. Let's train the Afghans with our troops there, as well as large contingents of mercenaries, members of private security companies. Various civil society groups in the U.S. held a counter event for peace and economic justice on Friday the 18th and Saturday the 19th. In the People's Church, attended by organizations from around the world to witness the emergence of a global movement against war, militarism, inequality, and poverty, which represents the majority of the inhabitants of the planet. Poverty, inequality, and militarism are forms of violence that constitute a vicious circle which must be broken for the survival of humanity. Each of these evils is fed from by the other. All must be challenged. All three are in NATO, a military alliance linked with the interests of several of the richest and most powerful nations. Joining us via Skype is Rick Razoff, who is in Chicago right now. Rick lives in Chicago and has been engaged in anti-war activities for over 40 years. He is the manager of the Stop NATO website. It's at rickrazoff.wordpress.com, or the email list is groups.yahoo.com, and participated in the May 20th rally and march against NATO in Chicago. Welcome, Rick. Do we have him? Are we connected? Hello? It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little more about you and how long you've been involved with the Stop NATO campaign.
How long have I been involved in anti-NATO activities? Over 13 years, fairly consistently, almost on a daily basis. By the way, I very much appreciate your quoting from the recent Excelsior article by Luis Gutierrez Esparza, who I had the good fortune of meeting in Chicago. He was here for a counter summit, and we both gave brief greetings during the rally on Sunday, May 20th. By the way, he reiterated a point at that time that he made several years ago, which is that the border between the United States and Mexico is also the border between NATO and Latin America. And he emphasizes, did many speakers, the fact that the so-called North Atlantic Treaty Organization has become a global military force in the post-Cold War era, and made the connections, as you read, between domestic problems at home and global militarization.
What is NATO for those who don't know?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
What is NATO?
It's NATO is an acronym for North Atlantic Treaty. Yes, it's a military alliance established by the United States in 1949, which initially included 12 countries, but now has grown to 28, registering a 75% increase in the decade between 1999 and 2009. It has now proclaimed itself to be a global military and security force. It is an aggressive military alliance and organization. It has waged war in 3 continents since 1999, that is in Europe, Asia, and as of last year in Africa and Libya. And it's one that announced during its summit here in Chicago that it's activated the first phase of an interceptor missile system, which is a threat to not only European but global security.
Wow. What else are they involved in? Is there anything else they're involved in?
Yes, I mean, they're involved in most everything. I'll read you a real brief excerpt from the summit declaration that was issued after the May 20th, 21st summit. One of almost 60 points includes the following: a stable and reliable energy supply, diversification of routes, suppliers, and energy resources, and the interconnectivity of energy networks remains of critical importance. So NATO proclaims itself to, among other issues, to protect Western energy strategy and obtainability of resources and control of energy resources globally, amongst other matters.
So I think we heard plenty of reasons, but why should we oppose NATO, in your opinion?
Well, we have the largest military alliance in history that have a U.S. dominated, or really, in essence, an extension of the Pentagon that can intervene anywhere in the world on behalf of the interests of the major Western powers. The United States in the first place, but certainly its key NATO allies, France, Germany, Britain, and others as well as that. If you want to talk about the American and really the Western, really the global 1%, we're talking about the countries, the United States again in the first case, that control all the major international lending institutions, trade institutions. I'm speaking, of course, about the IMF, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and also has the mightiest military power in human history, and moreover has expanded that power through the 28-member military bloc that is NATO. So it's one that advances the interests of a very narrow elite within the Western world at the expense of the rest of the world. We have to recall, for example, that the collective population of all NATO member states is somewhere in the area of 900 million people. There are 7 billion people on the planet. Anyone who has seen photographs of the 28 heads of states of NATO countries gathering in Chicago this past will notice, for example, that with the exception of American President Barack Obama, they all look very much alike. Because they're all of European or European background. And that's certainly not a reflection of the world. There were no representatives at the NATO summit, at least in the full capacity, from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East, from Oceania, from Latin America. This is a Western elite military bloc
Wow. So what happened in Chicago?
Pardon me?
What happened in Chicago? I know we've seen some videos on it, but from your perspective, what's going on down there?
There was a tremendous outpouring of activism, of optimism. You know, I might emphasize that in addition to weeks of anti-NATO activities, that we were not only talking about opposition to the military plot, but that you know, activists from any number of organizations and causes were suggesting an alternative. You read earlier from the Luis Gutierrez Esparza article, where he used the phrase "another world is possible," and in fact, what was being emphasized in the counter activities during the NATO summit was that the $1 trillion that NATO countries spent last year on their respective militaries, it's $1 trillion, could certainly be far better spent on human needs. One of the lead-in stories in our discussion, of course, was demonstrations outside the home of Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who's recently closed 6 community mental health centers in Chicago. I happen to work in the field of mental health. We know that 18 U.S. veterans commit suicide every day. That is 1 every 80 minutes. And at the same time, in order to have a $55 million, that's the official price tag, $55 million extravaganza hosting NATO in Chicago, that this occurs against the backdrop of closing mental health facilities and cutting off services to those most desperately in need of them in our city. And this extends across the country. Representatives at the rally on the 20th included mental health workers, transit workers, school teachers, nurses, community activists, immigration rights activists, and others, who all made common cause around the issue that military spending, which in the United States last year was an estimated $729 billion. That's the highest since 1945. That is World War II levels. And that breaks down to over $2,300 for each of the 300 million citizens of the United States. That the message was not only directly confronting NATO, which is the largest and the most dangerous military alliance in history, but it was also more broadly an effort to address the fact that monies are being siphoned off for the military and for wars abroad that are desperately needed for basic human services in the United States and in other nations.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks, Rick. We're going to come back to the conversation with you in just a minute. We'd like to go to a video as soon as that is ready for us to watch on NATO. Mr. Director, are we ready on that?
We're here today at the NATO Summit. Today is May 20th, and you're watching Inside Out News.
I today am giving back my Global War on Terrorism Service Medal because I realized that after a while that it was just nothing but an idea made by a bunch of politicians, money-hungry politicians in Washington who will do nothing and have a complete disregard for human life and will do anything in their power to just make more money in the end. Now if it's just an idea, then therefore it was just an idea that sparked 2 wars that I had to fight in. And I don't want any part of it anymore. And I choose human life over war, militarism, and imperialism.
Been following the protesters all day today. They started at Grant Park and marched down to the end of the park, about 2 miles down over to the Hyatt where the NATO summit is being held, where President Obama and other world leaders were at today. There was at least, we'd say, about 10,000 protesters, maybe more than that. We haven't heard a number yet. That's an estimate that we are giving. It was very difficult to tell how many protesters were in the march. They marched here from Grant Park just up this way, marched all the way down. It was a very peaceful march. They arrived over by the hotel where the NATO summit is, and they were met by a lot of police on horses. There they had the ceremony where the war veterans and veterans of NATO wars were there. They threw their medals away. Scott Olson, the Iraq war veteran who was injured at Occupy Oakland, suffered a concussion. He was there. He also threw his medals away. After that, at the end of that, the protesters began leaving very peacefully, and within about 15 minutes, the police moved in serious heavy riot gear. They moved in and began corralling the protesters in the intersection there on Michigan. And there, that was when things turned ugly. Many of the protesters who were trapped inside the intersection were beaten. It's been reported by Chicagoans that some lost their teeth. Many are in the hospital, suffering concussions, battered, bruised. We saw a protester being carried out on a stretcher. He was covered in gauze and bleeding. So we can confirm that there was serious violence going on there against the protesters. It's being reported on some of the mainstream media that the protesters that were inciting, that Black Bloc was inciting the violence. We were there at the intersection. We saw the protesters leaving peacefully. They did not incite violence. It was completely incited by the police department, by the Chicago police. From that moment, they began ordering dispersal orders for protesters to leave. It was difficult to hear what they were saying. They did not give a time limit. They pushed protesters out and continued to arrest them along the way.
Move back, move back. Back it up, back it up. Keep the line.
His name is
Jonathan Ziegler. Yeah, and he's his stream is revolutionary_Z. That's his Twitter. Okay, revolutionary_Z. So please tweet it out. He's under arrest. It's so fucked up.
I know. Really,
I didn't know.
After that, protesters were moved out and they dispersed into the streets. They eventually met back here at Grant Park once again, just a bit south from here, I believe. And then they were having a GA. It was the occupiers, and they decided spontaneously to march. We happened to be coming up the street, and we ran into them, and we joined them, and we followed them, and we are here now. We've been following them throughout the city of Chicago. It is now 9:24. We've been following them for the past couple of hours. There was a moment where we were under a train overpass, and we thought for sure that we were all about to be arrested, perhaps suffering the same fate as the protesters who were taken in earlier today in the day protest. However, the occupiers managed to split up and leave the area, and they've now met up here at the Chicago Institute of Art, where they've gathered. They have not moved from here. They've been here for maybe a half hour now. As you can see, there's police all behind me here. The police have been following the protesters all around the city. There has been probably 500 to 1,000 protesters who have come out onto the street. Not all of them who were at the GA. They came, they found each other, and they regrouped. It's a question of what's going to happen next. We don't know. But we'd like to play a few clips of interviews that we conducted earlier today before the march for you, so you can get an idea of the mood and the atmosphere leading up to this momentous occasion where all these protesters from various organizations gathered today to protest unanimously against the NATO summit.
Talk about a police state. I think I saw more police officers in that video than protesters. So much repression. But now let's go back with Rick Razoff. Oh, I think we're still not connected with Rick. My floor manager's letting me know we're still not connected with him. But yes, it's just crazy what's going out there. You know, we talk about dictatorships and the US goes out there. Oh, we're back. Hello, Rick. So why so much repression? Why do you think so much? Why so much repression?
In the weeks building up to the summit, the City of Chicago administration under Mayor Rahm Emanuel, we're running a autocracy in the city. I should mention there's no democratic process whatsoever in the 50-member city council. Anything that Emanuel puts forward, including the annual budget, is simply rubber stamped. It's turned into a mockery of democracy in Chicago. Not that his predecessor, the young Richard Daley, was much better or any better, but Emanuel has sewn up just a gagged city council, so we have no, opposition whatsoever. But what has happened in the weeks leading up to this summit was a very deliberate and large-scale effort to create a climate of fear, of panic, of hysteria in the city. And on the day of the march itself, on Sunday, and the preceding day on Saturday, the banner headlines in both major dailies, newspapers in Chicago, were, anti-NATO terrorist link and so forth. And that, in fact, I know firsthand from people I've spoken with, that, in fact, led to people not going to the rally and to the march because they feared disproportionate or, even worse, police activities based around phony terrorist scare.
Do you think capitalism is dead or dying?
Sometimes a wounded beast is the most dangerous, and I believe that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a creature that has held sway over the world. It's been the king of the jungle, if you will, and now it's being challenged and it's starting to rot from within. And I'm afraid that's when it can become the most, desperate and sometimes the most dangerous, because it'll be lashing out anywhere and nowhere at all, as we've seen, with the video you show. Even peaceful protesters in Chicago are being labeled terrorists, and disproportionate police forces being used. I would hope it dies a natural death without wreaking any more havoc and carnage in the world.
Can capitalism exist without exploitation and the staggering level of suffering and inequality?
If you're talking about economic exploitation, no, I think the two are synonymous. If you're talking about militarism or broad, it is, what we're seeing is even an aberration, even in terms of capitalism. That is, we're seeing a very aggressive, predatory, neoliberal, international version of rock baron style capitalism of the 1800s, but now extended on a global scale. And NATO, again, is ultimately its military enforcement wing. This is the military component of the 1%. And it quite clearly recognizes itself as such. And as with the statement that I read earlier from the NATO Summit Declaration about the military bloc arrogating to itself the right to protect, the energy security and energy concerns of the Western powers, NATO will ultimately be used to defend a flagging and decaying system.
Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up the conversation?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on. I want to thank Occupy Wall Street and its various affiliates around the country for all the support it gave to us during the rally and other activities last week and the first day of this week. The youth, the vivacity, the commitment, the selflessness of the Occupy activists who came to Chicago, as well as our own, is really exemplary. And for somebody a little bit older like myself, I can't tell you how exhilarating it was to see young people with so much enthusiasm and so much knowledge. Participating and being able to identify militarism is the major threat to the world, but also one inextricably connected with an exploitative economic system.
Yeah, Occupy Wall Street is definitely inspiration to many around the world. Thank you, Rich, for being here, and we should definitely have you again soon. It was very enlightening. Nick Modern, journalist and director of NoDrones.com, displays a replica of a Reaper drone and has sidewalk conversations about drone warfare outside New York's Museum of Modern Art. Here's a video. We're going to be talking to Nick pretty soon. He's actually our next guest. Okay, now it's going to the video. We're ready for the video?
Looking at a replica of a Reaper drone, MQ-9, such as they fly in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, and Iraq. This is about 20%. The real one has a 66-foot wingspan, 36 feet long. The materials in this cost about $350. I make a lot of parts at one time and then assemble them. The 11 billion number has to do with the drone program from the time it started in the late 90s. By the time they get done making this particular model, they estimate it will have cost $11 billion. A drone by itself cost about $30 million, and the armament, a full weapons load on this cost about $320,000. So every time they launch 4 Hellfire missiles and 2 500-pound bombs, it's about $250,000.
How many people have been killed by drones?
It's very hard to tell. They've in Pakistan accounted for maybe 2,000 people, and I think close to 900 have been identified as civilians. But these killings are done in very remote areas, and so the documentation is really not there as to what's happening. The general press does not provide information about drones or about warfare in general. And so it's more satisfying for me to actually go and take information into the street like this, be on the sidewalk, talk to people, answer questions, try to understand what people's concerns are. We're out here at the entrance of MoMA. Inside there is a display called Images of War at a Distance. And it gets into this abstraction of how has the human been abstracted from war and enabled to do war apparently without consequence. I think that's something that we've tried to show here, is that war does have a consequence. We have a video that shows someone firing a missile and blowing up a moving pickup truck.
Copy.
Pre-launch checklist.
How do you get those videos?
PRF code.
This is on
AEA power.
On.
Yep.
AEA bit.
In progress.
So that's not
Passed.
classified at all.
Weapon power.
Right.
On.
Anybody can see.
Weapon bit.
Passed.
Code weapons.
Coded.
Weapon status.
Weapons ready.
Pre-launch checklist complete.
Pilot, Sentinel, you are cleared to engage white pickup truck at your discretion.
3, 2, 1, rifle.
Every time they look at this, people see someone killing someone else. Where on the twin display, we have a video camera mounted on the drone that shows people in the street, in the crosshairs, on the screen. So when people look and say, well, that's us, and some people do look at it and say, oh, we're on screen, or we're on the target.
So good.
You just got shot.
Thank you.
We came here the night before New Year's Eve, which means so many people are moving, but we have had some very good conversations down here. What do you think about the idea of these things flying around?
No, it's very scary. I mean, they can see everything that you're doing. And they can blow you up in any moment. So no, it's very scary, and also knowing that the pilot is not here.
I would have to say I'm kind of glad they're up there. I have a lot of friends who are pilots, and I'd hate to see them in situations where they could avoid being put at risk.
The specific invention of the drone is a step towards reducing collateral damage and towards providing an alternative to more large-scale tactics, right? You don't need ground troops. You don't need SEAL Team 6 if you've got drones. So in that sense, I feel like it could be a step in the right direction.
I was in the Navy. I was an imagery analyst. I used to do global hawk feeds, and so.
And so how detailed a picture can you get of individual people on the ground?
We can differentiate between people. We just can't say exactly because we don't have DNA and actual eyes on target.
Well, from a legal perspective on targeted killings, the United Nations has found that they were in contravention of international law, as far as I understand. 43 countries in the world have a drone program. You know, it's not just America that's doing this. That's very, very worrying that the whole world is suddenly a battlefield and that the laws of war apply rather than, you know, international humanitarian law, domestic laws, and they're much, much looser. You can get away with a lot more things under laws of war than you can under ordinary domestic law. So from the perspective of civilian casualties, it's problematic, yeah.
The drones are killing people in Pakistan, and they're not just killing so-called militants. They've killed about 197 children, and there's no trial. So I don't know. How do they know the people that they killed are militants, really?
What do you think about drones being used to assassinate people who haven't had the opportunity to be arrested or go to trial? You don't have a chance to go to court or to even know if you're the right person.
Okay. So we're talking about abroad. The people who came here and killed Americans who are at war with us. It's a new type of a war, as we all know that terrorism is. And there are certain means which are used against them, including drones. So as long as we have military under supervision of our commander-in-chief, I'm very comfortable with developing new technology. Are you?
But isn't it also true that people in those countries have a right to be protected against attacks from us or other people?
Well, yes. I mean, look, ideally, I think that everybody deserves to live in a world free of violence. That's not the world we live in. To make that a sacred value, we're not going to fight war. We're not going to violate other nations' sovereignty is just not a tenable strategy in counterterrorism.
I feel sorry for you and your argument. Then you leave yourself unprotected. That's it.
Unprotected by the drones?
Unprotected from the forces who are trying to kill Americans.
Well, the other interesting thing about drones for me is it's not just, there are a lot of states that are doing this, but also non-state actors as well are using drones. Hezbollah and Hamas have both got drones, and they've been used in the Lebanon conflict. And it's very, very easy to replicate and make basic drone technology, which can be used against America, against states, and furthering terrorist purposes.
War used to be, in the real old days with cavemen, I pick up a rock, I hit you over the head, your blood gets on me. I have to feel the rock, I have to feel the consequences of my behavior. Or then I form an army and now we're getting a little farther back. Now we're going to have a bow and arrow, and then a rifle. And we're always getting farther and farther and farther away from our enemy.
Rifle, how much, like 15 seconds?
So with drone missiles now, what we're having are soldiers playing essentially video games. They're blowing up soldiers on a TV screen, but there are real people dying on the other end of it.
4, 3, 2, 1. Good splash.
We have to think about where we're going if we're using our brains, our technology, our money, our resources to make killing easier. Where killing people becomes just a manipulation of data on a screen. It's a double-edged sword.
I'm actually writing my law thesis on the drone program. What I'm concerned about is when these robotic systems become even more intelligent and when decisions about life or death are fully automated. So I think this is just one step on the long road to more fully automated killing systems, which is, from an ethical, legal, political perspective, extremely problematic. Obviously, at the moment, the main issues are about targeted killings and the CIA's use of the drones, but I think this is just one step down the road for something much, much worse.
So I think that there's some very, very deep issues that are raised by the eye in the sky, the idea of summary execution from the sky, and death from the sky, and it's something that people really don't think about until they get to talk about it.
With us now is Nick Modern. Nick is the director of the 2012 No Drones Tour, drone warfare and drone operations, particularly by police, that are coming to this country. Welcome to Occupy Wall Street Live, Nick.
Yes, good morning. Thank you
us.
very much for this opportunity.
So tell us a little more about yourself.
Well, I'm basically a reporter. I've been involved with anti-war work for quite some time, much before the latest wars. And right now, we're involved in trying to get out into the street in various important political districts in the United States to explain to people more about drones, what the future holds, and how they can oppose the advancement of drones globally and in the United States. I mean, fundamentally, what we're out to do is to create an awareness that we can and must ban weaponized drones and drone surveillance globally. And I should say that we do go to protests and we do hold forums, but we go where we think we need to go to reach out to people in the street and not depend on people going to, a public forum at a church or school or someplace like that, because most people really, I think, are put off by this kind of thing, but they need to be engaged in a personal way.
Right. So what is the No Drones Tour?
Well, what we've done is to start out in April, going to congressional districts of 55 members of Congress who are on the Drone Caucus. In other words, within the U.S. Congress, on the House side, there are representatives who act as lobbying agents for the drone industry inside the U.S. Congress. In Brooklyn, Adolphus Towns is a member of the Drone Caucus. And so we went to his district. We reached out to people on the street at Trader Joe's, at Prospect Park, a lot of different places, in Court Square. And most people are not aware that there is a drone caucus. Most people don't know who's on it. And we found that most people didn't even know who their congressperson was, because the way the district lines are drawn, we just have the most faintest, representation of democracy. I think that this notion that when you vote, you can achieve something is only based on knowing what's going on and even knowing who your representative is. So it's a very big problem. And so with this tour, we try to cut through those different layers and tell people, well, this is what's going on with the drones. These are people responsible. This is how much campaign contribution they get to do this. So we have gone to Brooklyn, southern New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and then down to the G8 conference in Thurmont, Maryland. And at each place, we tell how much campaign money has come from the drone industry to various representatives.
What cities have you been in? What other cities are you covering?
Well, what we're going to do now is between this moment and July, we're going to be going to some places where we've been requested to go that aren't necessarily in these congressional districts. In July, we'll go to Ohio because that's a center of drone activity around Columbus. And then we're going to go to Southern California in October for 2 weeks, because that's the true center of drone building and energy is in the San Diego, LA County area. But we have built these replicas that you showed in the video. I think right now there's 11 of them in existence in various places. People have asked us for more, so we have to up our whole level of organization in terms of building these and getting them shipped and that sort of thing.
So they just take these things straight into the cities, huh?
Yes.
What are these drones, and why do you oppose the usage of them in our country?
Well, basically, because in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the technology moved to a place where GPS, like we use in our car, even on our phones, could be used to guide these pilotless aircraft. Microtechnology has made it possible to make very small, very smart robots of all kinds. So we've got a situation now where you can make killing force available in any part of the world, and the eyes in the sky in any part of the world, something that people have wanted for a long time but never have been able to develop to this degree. And so we're entering into an era that we're trying, and a lot of people are trying to work against that, but we're entering into an era where whole populations can be under constant view from the sky by people who are controlling the
Constant
drones.
threatening view, because
That's right.
They're fully loaded. They're not just flying around looking at people.
That's right. And the test ground for these and where they're being used now is in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, to accomplish goals that you just were talking about with the gentleman about NATO. Here in the United States, we have a very similar problem as far as the, if you want to say the 1% or the NATO or the corporations. We have people here who obviously haven't got jobs. People are getting more organized. The Occupy movement is really the beginning of people wanting to take direct control over their resources. We may have land reform in this country at some point. We may have other things that have been very progressive in other parts of the world late coming here. So there has to be a way to control this kind of movement. There has to be a way to make people and keep them afraid. And these drones present a huge leap forward on the part of those in power to be able to do that. And you have, I think, in the studio, a tape of what appears to be a Predator drone flying over Illinois. If you want to,
can we run that tape? I don't know. Do we have that ready?
We can talk about it while they're getting it up. Yeah. But basically, right now, this drone caucus has been very successful in opening U.S. airspace to drones.
Is that?
Yeah, we'll see it in a minute.
So now we're seeing this drone flying over. This is a U.S. state. Which state is this?
This is in Illinois.
This is Illinois.
And I was just shown this tape last night.
So where NATO was happening.
You can see this thing right in the sky, and it is almost certainly what's called MQ-1 Reaper, Predator drone. It's a smaller.
And it's flying low. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was flying low, and it appears to be loaded with Hellfire missiles. They normally carry 2 Hellfire missiles. There's a larger drone that I made a replica of, or the ones we have on tour. Those are much bigger than this Predator. They carry 4 Hellfire missiles and 2 500-pound bombs.
So some of them are bigger.
Are bigger than this, yeah, and much more deadly. So there are very basic questions about why was a Predator flying in this airspace? Why was it loaded?
In civilian airspace.
In civilian airspace. These are not now supposed to fly anywhere except in very restricted areas. The Federal Aviation Administration has entered into a process of increasing the numbers of places they can be flown, but this pretty clearly was not flying anywhere where it should have been. And this is something that I hope the press will be, again, demanding answers about, because it's very important to understand that aircraft had no one on board.
And I didn't see anything going on the streets. There was no uproarious happenings. Right. It was all very calm. There's just somebody videotaping this machine.
So accidents do happen. That could go out of control. Yeah. Those missiles could have been fired accidentally, you see.
Why else would you fly a machine like that if you're not wanting to threaten people?
Yep.
It's a flying, moving weapon.
Yep.
I mean, why are you going to put it out there if it's not for that purpose?
That's exactly right. And so what we have is a process, thanks to the Drone Caucus, where the Congress opened U.S. skies to drones by 2015 anywhere in U.S. airspace. And small drones, 40 pounds or less, can fly on below 400 feet, operated by the police, as of really now.
Below 400 feet?
Yes.
That's like shorter than some of these skyscrapers that
Yes,
we have here in New York.
That's right.
So they can like fly into the city, like not even over it, like straight in.
The way it is in the law right now, that's right. And the FAA is scrambling to try to know even how to handle this, because there's a lot of resistance within the Federal Aviation Administration to allow these drones in U.S. airspace anywhere, because this is the busiest airspace in the world. There's something like 87,000 flights in the air every single day. So this whole notion that this is somehow going to save lives and help the police and this and that, what it's going to do is increase the militarization of the police, because these drones now can be fitted with 12-gauge shotguns with 20 rounds apiece on board, tear gas, other kinds of anti-personnel things, anti-personnel kind of sound equipment. And police departments are making requests already of these drone makers to supply these things. And so we have something where I think there is a chance, if people can get organized, to roll this back and to roll back the militarization of the police, because once this gets in place and all of the systems are set up, it's going to be very, very hard to do anything to stop it.
To revert.
That's right, yeah. And so what we see being experienced in Afghanistan with that video shows what people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia are seeing every single day, except that, as you say, people are dying. People are having to be on sleep medications and antidepressants because the buzz of the drones is pretty constant in certain areas. And so when they hear that sound, they know somebody can die at any moment without explanation, without the opportunity to go to court. And this notion that we have a free fire zone anywhere in the world under this terrorism kind of thing is totally unacceptable. And people have to say, that what Mr. Holder say, and Mr. Obama and Mr. Brennan, they're just saying, we have taken the right unto ourselves to kill whomever we wish to kill, period.
This is like extreme aggression. I mean, do you think that capitalism as an economic system is to blame for such an invention?
Well, I think that Rick was talking about the dying of capitalism. And I think we have to understand that capitalism and other kind of systems, too, of exploitation always rely on negotiating at gunpoint. And so we have an Army and a Marine Corps now that is totally debilitated by these constant deployments into these resource-rich areas to try to feed cheap resources back in here. Don't negotiate with the people, just kill them and grab their stuff. The public won't, and they can't support it anymore. The military's falling apart, and you can see that because they're sending back they themselves are sending back pictures of atrocities. So the drones then are supposed to fill this gap, keep the pressure on, keep those people under control in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia.
Bring our troops back.
And bring the troops home, but yet keep that fear factor, keep killing people, keep telling leaders of, like Libya or any of these places, if you don't do what we want, we're going to come from the sky silently. It's going to be cheap for us. It's going to be costly for you. You're going to die. So that's the notion of this. And it's a very sick, desperate thing. My opinion, it's going to fail because the people won't have it.
Yeah, the people are coming together, and so what can we do, as a people to stop this madness?
Well, I think on a local level, we're encouraging people to have resolutions in their own town, city, county councils to forbid drones to fly in airspace over their municipality, including, and obviously, police drones And just to say that will not be a part of the way we take care of business here. This is going into a realm we shouldn't be in. Just the same way we don't want to go into nuclear weapons, we're trying to roll that back. We don't want to go into poison gas, we're trying to roll that back. We don't want to go into napalm, we roll that back. We don't want to go into landmines, we roll that back. We're not going into drones because we don't want to enter into this world where we're under constant surveillance, whether it's 1984, where people will kill us at will and say it's legal. What the pattern is, if you're willing to kill people anywhere, now we're killing U.S. civilians, we can have police saying, we saw these 3 people doing thus and so, we know of their history, we were worried they were going to do this, we had to kill them.
And especially after the NDAA, they could just do whatever they want.
Exactly. So it all fits into that mode of official declaration of lawlessness.
So where can people join or support your campaign?
Well, I think that the best thing to do is go to our website called No Drones, KNOW drones.com. There's a lot of information about drones there. Obviously, you know, we appreciate support that people will give. We're having to change our organization.
We are out of time.
Okay.
So that's
right.
nodrones.com, KNOW. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it.
And thank you, audience, for joining us. And we hope to see you here next week at 9 a.m. every Thursday. Thanks for